Hello, everyone, and thank you for attending today's webinar, Don't Be Left in the Dark, Next Level Solar Design. I'm Kelsey Misbrenner, editor with Solar Power World. Before we begin, we wanted to let you know about our application widgets at the bottom of your screen. You can move and resize them however you'd like. Slides are available to view at any time via the Resource widget. Submit any questions related to today's webinar via the Q&A widget. Our presenters will send answers afterward to the email you used to sign up for today's webinar. We encourage you to tweet with us. Simply sign in through the Twitter box. Today's hashtag is automatically added to your tweets. And finally, if you're watching this on demand, you can still use all the features I went over. Let's get started with today's webinar, Don't Be Left in the Dark, Next Level Solar Design. Today's speaker is Justin Lee. Justin is the Senior Product Manager at EagleView. He's worked in the solar industry for nearly 10 years, starting on the customer side, procuring commercial solar, then as a solar savings tariff expert. And now I'll turn it over to Justin.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for coming and joining us today. Like Kelsey said, I've worked in solar for about 10 years, in many cases helping to provide software solutions to solar installers, which is, kind of a lot of what we're going to be talking about today. Particularly the focus of our conversation today is really talking about next level solar design. So how do we start to incorporate data, best practices, et cetera, to really help bring solar design to the next level? So the agenda for today, we're going to talk a little bit about some key barriers to adoption. And in that case, both about adoption of customers using new tools, solar installers using new tools, but then also homeowners and customers in terms of adopting solar and some of their questions and concerns. We're going to look at how do you improve close rates and increase customer satisfaction. We're going to talk a little bit about EagleView SunSite, which is one of the products that we offer here at EagleView, and then how to kind of use that to grow your business. So the first off, I probably don't have to tell anybody on here the fact that solar is booming. Although if you've been in the industry long enough, you definitely are probably familiar with the solar coaster, and that that boom, that bust, it's kind of a crazy ride. But overall, even with those ups and downs, solar is becoming some really big business. Over 53 gigawatts of PV have been installed in the U.S. alone, which is enough to power 10.1 million homes. The context there, though, is there's over 75 million single-family homes in the United States. So even though we have come a tremendous amount of way in the last couple of years, there's still a huge amount of opportunity ahead, which I think is super exciting. And the rate at which we're installing solar has just grown so quickly, it's a little bit hard to believe. I recently saw a statistic that 70% of solar installed in the United States was installed in the last 5 years, even though technically the solar industry started over 40 years ago. So it really just shows you how quickly things are changing right now, but then also how much more opportunity there is to grow. So with all this opportunity and all the excitement that's going on, one of the things that we want to talk about are there's still some real challenges. The first off is why so few solar stars? The reason that we mentioned that is there are definitely successful solar companies out there right now, but even the most successful companies who are growing quickly are still with some really high-level challenges. And that's what we want to focus on. How do we start to deal with those? Those sort of break down into a couple different categories. We kind of got customer expertise and understanding, some of the sales challenges, and then installation complications. So ROI is one thing that a lot of customers want to understand, and that makes a lot of sense. Solar is generally a pretty big investment, and even though environmental concerns are definitely part of it, it really is for many people an investment. They want to see a return on that. One of the fantastic things is today, almost anywhere you are, there is an ROI on that. And even just a couple of years ago, they're really questionable. There may not have been. But because the industry has changed so quickly, customers don't necessarily understand the ROI, or the patchwork of state-level policies and complications make it really challenging to understand ROI in one location versus another. So one of the things that's really important is figuring out, what are the incentives, what are the financing that's available for customers, how do you communicate that, and how do you get customers comfortable with that. There's also, solar is still so new, nobody really worries that Whirlpool is going to be around in 2 or 3 years to service a warranty, but lots of customers may have questions about that with solar. So I think it's important to understand that experience and how do we sort of do that customer experience. Solar still has a pretty long sales cycle. 8.9 months on average from the time a customer starts to think about solar today until they actually get it on their roof. And then maybe have to wait another couple of weeks for it to actually get turned on by the utility. So it's really important to think about how do we shorten that sales cycle. And a big part of that is change orders. Then get through the customer questions, get them through the sales cycle, and you get out and you do installations. And that's when a lot of issues can pop up as well. Missed events, inaccurate measurements, panels not quite fitting. There's a lot of challenges as well. So even though there has been a lot of success in the solar industry, I would say that any solar company that's able to solve, 1 or 2 of these challenges still has a tremendous opportunity for growth and sales. That's what we want to help you all get to today. So talking about solar, you're probably pretty familiar with this. Selling solar is challenging. It tends to be a multi-step process that's spread out over almost 2 to 3 months on average. So this is 2 to 3 months from the time a customer contacts a solar installer. The last slide talks about when they start thinking about solar. So we'll get the customer a lead, whether that's door knocking or if they submit something online. A couple weeks until you get to the customer proposal. Try to work, go back to the back office, get a tier 1 design out there, get a site assessment to refine that, and then hopefully get them to a final contract. Customers usually come in, that very first meeting, kind of at the beginning of this process, is where they have all their questions. And unfortunately right now in solar, it takes us, maybe in this scenario, up to 6 weeks to be able to answer a lot of those questions, which is one of the reasons why customers are confused with solar. They want to be able to answer their questions really quickly. Then from that final contract, in many cases, we do end up going to tier 2 design, getting the financing, doing the permitting, getting the system installed, and then potentially even having to do as-built afterwards. So even though a lot of companies have figured out ways to get through this whole process, it's very different than the process for buying a car, for example, or which a car is actually a comparable cost in terms of total amount. I recently purchased a house, and I was very fortunate, but my home buying process actually was shorter than the process to get solar on my home. So probably don't have to tell any of you about that. And then installations can be really unpredictable. So assuming that you've gotten through the customer questions, you've gotten into a contract, you've gotten your system signed, there's a lot of things that come up the day of. You can have missed events, you can have inaccurate measurements. All those can create changes, create complications. Anytime you have to make a change, you bring up customer confusion, you increase the risk of dropout. But there's also another piece to think about with, inaccurate measurements can cause you to displease the customer. You had to drop panels the day of installation. But the other side of it is actually, it means you could have missed a potential sale. If your measurements are off by a couple inches, and you actually could have added a whole other row of panels to that house, but you didn't know that until the day of installation, that can also be one of the factors that you need to consider in terms of how effective is your installation process. This goes back into soft costs. So, the industry is talking a lot about right now. Hardware costs have come down tremendously, but in customer acquisition and marketing, and they've been really stubborn and really frustrating to deal with. The accurate measurements are really expensive, change orders increase risk of dropout, et cetera. And at the end, what you need to do is figure out how to get your close rates up. There aren't a lot of solar leads. The beginning of the funnel for the solar industry is something that requires a lot of work. Customer leads are expensive to get. And so it's really valuable to think about how can you leverage the most out of any one of those individual leads. So kind of talking about this of the industry today, one of the things that we really want to talk about today is sort of EagleView, who we are, and then SunSight, which is an offering that we have specifically for the solar industry. So to give a little bit of introduction, EagleView is a remote data assessment company. For the solar industry, we deliver really precise roof measurements that we derive from aerial imagery. And when we talk about aerial imagery, we are generally talking about actually plane-based. So there are several companies that will offer satellite imagery from a couple hundred miles up, and then you may get drone imagery, maybe a couple hundred. But aerial images are a really nice spot in the middle there where we can cover hundreds of thousands of square miles in the United States every year, but still offer really high resolution imagery. So the imagery that we're using, if you imagine sort of a pixel and you zoom in down to look at your house, each pixel can be, just 1-2 inches in size, which allows you to get really accurate measurements. It's hard to get an accurate measurement if each pixel is 12 or 18 inches. So we're predominantly aerial-based imagery. From that imagery, we can develop a three-dimensional model of the host house. EagleView's been around for about 18 years. We do similar type of roof measurements or building measurements for the roofing industry, the property insurance industry. We fly after hurricanes and identify damage on buildings, et cetera. Amongst all these different verticals that we operate in, we measure about 20 to 30,000 roofs a day across North America. So when we say, we deliver precise roof measurement derived from aerial imagery, there is, nearly 2 decades worth of expertise across multiple industries that goes into making sure that we really can provide those things for you. What that ends up delivering in terms of, goals for the solar industry is we're going to give you for each facet on a roof, we're going to give you the pitch of that facet. We're going to give you information like the azimuth, the area, and then we also identify penetrations. So we give you the penetration, their precise location, and also their diameter, which gives you their size. All those pieces allow you to fit together and work on your solar installation. So here's an image of a house, kind of just a top-down, to give you an idea of the pieces, some of the different pieces that we measure. In this particular case, we also offer you line designations. So red is going to be ridge lines, blue are going to be valley, black is going to be eaves, et cetera. And give you a whole lot of information that's needed along the way. So one of the things that we find a lot is, so we offer roof measurements, but we know that oftentimes people don't necessarily measure roofs the same. A lot of installers, a lot of just individual surveyors have kind of their own way or not necessarily a consistent vocabulary of how we talk about it. So I wanted to really explain, when we say roof measurements, what exactly are you getting? So you really can understand then how to use that information. So let me just kind of walk through this a little bit, and I will actually take questions at the end of this slide, just to kind of make sure that we're clear on some of the terminology before we go forward. I think that clarity is really important. So when we talk about edge-to-edge measurements, so first off, horizontal measurements. So imagine here we're taking measurements from aerial imagery looking down at the house. So what we're doing is sort of what we can see to what we can see. So that's going to be the edge of the shingles to the edge of the shingles on the side of the house. Now that is, you have to imagine from those shingles, you've got a fascia board, potentially a gutter. So we'll include up to the edge of the gutter. We don't measure including the gutter. So it'll be right up to the gutter or the edge of the fascia. And then kind of going back from there, there's that soffit underneath. You have the fascia, you have some soffit space, and then you get back into the rafters a little bit back further inside of the home. So that is, those are elements you need to take into account. We say, what's a horizontal measurement on an EagleView report? Vertical measurements are, again, based on what we can see. So we will go from the fascia board or the gutter, not including the gutter, and we'll measure up to the midline on the ridge of that portion of the roof. And that's important. A lot of times when people say, oh, we measure from the top to the bottom, they may measure up to the edge of the ridge cap, or they measure part of the ridge cap. We go straight up to the middle line of that ridge cap. And then valley measurements are going to be similar. So shingles up into the middle. Perhaps you get water shields, or maybe in some climates you have some. We're going to go directly to the middle line of that intersection. Penetrations are the last kind of key feature that we measure in terms of line lengths. So there are sort of two pieces you could think about when talking about measuring penetration. One is the actual vent itself that comes up out of the roof plane, but then there's the flashing around it. And so our penetration measurements are going to go up to the edge of that flashing. So if that's an 8x8 flashing with a 3-inch pipe, we're going to measure up to that 8x8 piece, which in many cases will align with where you're going to lay the panels. So like I said, if you have any questions on kind of specifics of those, I think it's really important to talk about that before we move on. If you type those in, and go ahead and address any questions before we move on. So those are measurements. There's also a lot of other little details that I think are really helpful in terms of the deliverables of SunSite. So one of the pieces that we find people really enjoy is actually being able to classify and name different pieces of the roof. So, if you've ever tried to call into the solar designer and say, that really big, the big kind of southwestern facet, that's not the one over the garage, but the one over kind of the front door, and there's those 3 vents, when you go to the vent most to the left or the most to the south, the reports actually come back with every individual facet and penetration specifically named. So you can say on facet B, look at penetration 7. And it just simplifies it a lot because then there's this common code, this common vocabulary that you can use when talking from a sales rep to a surveyor to be able to communicate to a homeowner or solar designer, et cetera. And then there also is the line type designation, which I showed in an earlier slide, helping you to really understand exactly the different pieces that you're seeing. So that's what when EagleView says, we give you measurements, this is what we mean by measurements. So, okay, I don't see any questions specifically for this. There are some questions, and we'll address those at the end. So, great. So at the end of the day, measurements are great, but what you really need to know is where can you put solar panels. And just because there's roof surface there doesn't mean you can put solar panels. So, we have this concept of what's the usable space that you can actually lay down for your system. Now, this is going to require, this depends on a lot of different pieces. In many cases, this is going to be regional. What's the authority having jurisdiction, the AHJ, that governs where this solar system is being installed. That can really affect things like setbacks. So are they, fire code? Are there safety elements? Does your company have particular requirements in terms of how much spacing you want to have that's going to, be subtracted out of those roof measurements? Or, a lot of times we'll see differing requirements around historic neighborhoods or HOAs in terms of what is considered permissible or not permissible. Those can vary tremendously across the country, and in our experience, generally the installers are the ones who are the experts in those because you know your area, you know the quirks and the requirements. So those are things that need to be taken into account once you've gotten EagleView measurements. Another one is going to be the racking system that you're using. So there's now a variety of different racking systems out there, which is great. But you have to take a look, is your system cantilevered, for example? Does the footing extend right out? Is the footing flush with the edge of that panel, or is the panel cantilevered a couple inches over that? That's going to affect where your panels can be placed in relation to things like a ridge path or a valley or a penetration. Again, we give you those different measurements of the pipe versus the penetration. So maybe your solar panel can extend over that flashing by an inch. The last thing that really comes into account that we think some of our customers have had some issues with is the height of the racking. So solar plane versus roof plane. What we provide for you is actually the roof plane itself. And so we've gone ahead and, now roofs are not consistent across the entire roof. A particular facet may have slightly different pitches, et cetera. So what we're providing to you is a best fit plane. We've leveled out that roof facet to be consistent all the way across, which in many ways actually reflects the way that your solar system will be installed once you level out panels. Minute pitch variations in a facet don't actually necessarily show up on the solar system itself. But the solar systems often, depending on your racking, unless you're doing integrated or a flush style racking, are raised a couple inches up off the roof. And it's really important to take that difference into account where your solar plane may actually be parallel but not identical to your roof plane. And this is where, we go back and we talk about some of those different measurements, including ridge cap, et cetera, become really important. If you have a flush system and you use an EagleView measurement up to the ridge of a roof, that panel is going to bump into the ridge cap. And so you may need to think about how wide is an average ridge cap. And my usable space actually may begin 3 or 4 inches kind of in from the end of that measurement. On the other hand, if your system isn't flush and is actually raised a couple inches off the roof, which is pretty common in the industry at this point, then you may be able to extend over that ridge cap, but at that point now you may actually extend over the top of the roof. And you increase a lot of your wind loading things, or in many cases that isn't permissible to do. So it's important to kind of take into account, if your panels are sitting 4 inches off the roof plane, how are you backing them away from that ridge line to make sure that you don't overshoot the roof. You can have the same issue with crowding valleys. So flush panels could fit into that valley, but if both panels are intersecting and they're also 4 inches up off the roof plane, they may actually start to bump into each other, and that can cause issues day of install. The last one then is gutters, gutter overshoot. I have worked on jobs, and it's really unfortunate, where you go out and install your solar panels right at the edge of the gutter, but they're raised at 4 inches off the plane, and all of a sudden the water shoots straight off those solar panels onto the sidewalk below. And you've effectively negated your customer's multi-$1,000 investment in gutters. So these are all kind of cases that we've seen that are important to call out in terms of, sometimes if your surveyors may go out and measure and take those pieces into account. And we just want to make sure that it's very clear what our measurements are or aren't, so that you're really able to use them in the best way possible. So that's the data that we provide. The question now is, how do we provide that? So we provide the data in several different formats that you can use based on what makes sense for your company. So one, we actually generate a 3-dimensional roof model. So this is a DXF file. So if you're using CAD, or if you're using a solar design tool, or et cetera, DXF files will import directly into nearly any tool that's out there. They're pretty much an industry standard in terms of the file type. That roof model has all of the information incorporated into it. So you can measure pitch, measurements, et cetera, off of that, linear length, area measurements off that, and you can lay your panels directly on top of that. So that's generally how our customers choose, or at least how designers choose to incorporate EagleView data into their process. We also provide the data as structured data factors. So if you have an internal tool, say you have a Salesforce type tool, et cetera, and you want to be able to pull those data points in, we actually provide all of that data that you can use in your design software. The last case that we offer for all of our reports is actually a PDF report. So that will have all of the measurements visible, comes with several different pages. A lot of times customers will actually just print that out and take that into the field. It can be a great tool for showing customers. We do allow some opportunity for you to kind of put your name on there, et cetera, in addition to the EagleView name. And it shows a lot of the pictures from our imagery. That can be really helpful for customers to kind of understand, here's how these panels might look on my home, here's how they might fit. And then it's also really helpful for the contractor. So what's great about this, the data that we provide, there's a lot of value there. There's a lot of opportunity to use that. But if you sort of imagine your existing process and you were to slot in EagleView data using a sensor report, there's value right there. But there's a lot of things that it allows you to do in a way differently than you might be doing today. And so what we want to be able to help our customers do, again, going back to that first or second slide, we've installed 10 million, we can power 10 million homes across the country, but there's 75 million that need to get solar on them at some point or another. How do you figure out the standardization and the process efficiency to be able to go out and really grow your business, whether that's within your territory, expanding to new territories, et cetera? So in one way, EagleView is a really good partner for that because of our coverage. Like I mentioned earlier, because we use aerial-based imagery and because we are supplying that information to a couple of different industries, we actually are out there flying hundreds of thousands of miles of data per year. So there's a very good chance that anywhere that you and your customers are, there is EagleView data that's pretty recent, and that's going to allow you to build your business on top of it. Another piece of it is the consistency. Anytime that you want to automate a process, you need to make sure that the inputs that are coming in are going to be consistent enough that you can start to build rules, et cetera. Regardless of where or what type of home you ask your order EagleView measurements from, you're going to get the exact same data structure. You're going to get the exact same type of VXF. You're going to get the exact same type of PDF. And so that consistency allows you to say, okay, every time I get a model in, here's the things that I want to do. Whether you're writing code to do automated system design or you're creating a process in terms of how your workflow is going to engage with customers, you know that you're going to get the same type of product every time from EagleView. And then obviously it has to be accurate. You can design the best process in the world, but if bad data comes into it, then bad data is going to go out to it. So a couple of examples that we've seen, from our customers is being able to use EagleView information for a surveyor. If you have EagleView data before you go out there, say you order that report at the moment that you know that the appointment is confirmed, you want to go out there, you bring that EagleView out there, rather than having to climb up on the roof, rather than have to measure those pieces, you can just kind of take a quick look, maybe verify, jot some notes down, et cetera. And we have customers who now take a 2-hour site surveyor visit and cut that down to 45 minutes. So in a way, it becomes a real force multiplier for the surveyor. When they're out there, they're focusing on engaging with the homeowner, educating the homeowner, answering questions around ROI, et cetera, and then they're able to go on and fit in another session or two throughout the day. There's some real value there just in terms of allowing your people to do what they do better. One advantage of it, too, is that bad handwriting, a lot less of an issue now. You don't have to transcribe your measurements at the end of the day, maybe make a fat finger error, or hope that someone, some design office can go ahead and actually interpret your results. I personally was told by my mother that based on my handwriting, I should have been a doctor. So maybe your handwriting's better, but sometimes that can be a real issue. And one of the other pieces that we see really come up in terms of talking about this design, right now the industry standard in many cases is to do kind of that tier 1 design and then to come back later, a couple days later, a couple things. Change or I thought of things slightly different. One of the goals for EagleView to really help our customers is to figure out how to get rid of that tier 2 design. How can you do, a first and best design? This is what we're going to offer you. You know it now, and you don't really have to worry about trying to figure those things out. A lot of that comes from consuming that at that lead level. So if you're going to order EagleView report, go out there the day of that first visit with the customer, you know that you've got really good data. You can actually help them figure out exactly what that system's going to look like and help close that deal right away. Now, one of the things that we don't include so far, and you're probably thinking is like, okay, I can get up to the house and maybe my surveyor doesn't have to be on the roof to measure, but at the end of the day, a lot of homes still have some sort of a shading element tied to them. And so, what good is this if I still have to get up and get those shade pieces? Today, I would say knowing exactly where your measurements are and exactly having that model of the roof, if you do need to climb up on the roof to use something like a SunEye, now you've got a pretty good map of where you need to take that shading measurement. So perhaps a solar designer could say, when you go out to the house, it looks like I can probably build this system. Can you check these corners and make sure that panels on the edge aren't going to be too shaded? So again, you can get up there and rather than trying to measure a couple points on every facet, you can have a really targeted approach to get up and down as quickly as possible. What EagleView is going to be doing pretty soon that we're excited to kind of mention is being able to actually do remote shade calculation in the same way that we do our remote measurements, our remote length measurements. So EagleView imagery, like I said earlier, is pretty high resolution. That actually allows us to capture really good details about shapes of trees, shapes of buildings, et cetera. Once you have that information and you know what the path of the sun is, we're actually going to be offering the ability to generate a shade analysis, so TSRS, solar resource fraction across every roof plane at every 6 inches across it. So that will be, you'll get information for the entire house, and you'll get consistent information. So rather than going out there with a Suneye device, et cetera, which different folks may end up getting slightly different results, we just provide the same result each time based on what the shade is at that point. Now, obviously, shade changes over time. Trees grow, trees die, buildings change, et cetera. But you'll have a really good, very accurate snapshot of what that is now, what that might look like, and then you can project forward from that to the future. At the end of the day, shade is right now part science, part art, and our goal is really to make it as simple and clear-cut as, inverter specs, for example. This is just it. You don't have to worry about it. You just know what it is. The power of that, of the shading analysis tied with the measurements, is that's the point that it really allows you to not have to do site services. You're really going to have the complete information that you need. You may want to go out and talk to the customer, but there's a lot of other opportunities for that. We have some customers who actually at this point don't go out to the house until the installation. I know that they've got the data that they need. So we're really, really excited about that. We will release more information about that as that comes to market soon. But just know that EagleView is not, we're not done building new things, cool things for the solar industry. So at the end of the day, what we're really talking about is there's a lot of these technical challenges, there's these nuances, there's these problems to solve, but the real goal is to grow your business with EagleView. So getting the accurate data that you need when you need it at scale allows you to build those processes, to build those automations, to improve your tools so that you're getting those better proposals, potentially eliminating the need to do those tier 2 designs or those redesigns. All of those different pieces are going to help you be faster at your sale and faster at closing. And it's really going to improve the customer experience. If a lot of customers will shop around. If they've got 3 installers coming to the house and one, can't give you an answer for 4 or 5 weeks because they've got to get a surveyor out there to clamp on the roof, and another one can answer your question in just 2 or 3 days, that makes a really big difference for a customer. There's a massive experience change that's going on there. And they're a real positivity thing, too. Also, those sort of positive experiences are the ones that lead to referrals, which is kind of everyone's goal in terms of opening up that funnel for lead gen. So SunSlate is really a way to help, act as a force multiplier on your current processes right now, and then really help you think about if you've got a partner that you know is everywhere you need to be, is always going to be there, has really high accuracy, how can you use that foundation to build something really new and change the way that your industry works or that your operations work? So, the ending slide, obviously, EagleView is here to help. We are super excited about working with the solar industry. I'm super excited about continuing to help grow our products for the solar industry. We'd love to hear from you in terms of what questions you have, what desires you have, where you're working, how you might want to improve processes, et cetera. EagleView is definitely a partner to engage with you in all of that. So that is the official end, and I believe that Kelsey will be moderating some questions. I see some questions have been coming in, so excited to talk to you. Yep, that's right.
So yeah, we're ready to open the floor for some questions now. Remember, you can continue to submit questions at any point in the Q&A widget. All right, so the first question I'm seeing, the tool looks usable for solar panel rooftop design. Is the tool also usable for solar farms and design panel placement in a field terrain? There was a little typo there. For example, a 5 megawatt power plant.
This particular product is really aimed at rooftop solar. However, we do actually have some offerings for ground mount, for parking lot, shade structures, et cetera. So that would be a good one. If we could get your contact information, I can connect you with my counterpart who works on those different types of installations.
Okay, and then the other question by that person, is the tool available for international locations outside of the U.S.?
Currently, we have flights in so North America, so Canada and the United States, the UK. We've expanded into Australia, and I think there's some other locations on the plan coming up soon. So that would be another one. We'd love to talk and kind of understand where you're working, what kind of projects you're working on, and how we might be able to help you out.
Okay, next question. Why would I purchase Sunsight if I still need to get on the roof for shading data?
Yeah, that's a valid point. So that is part of the reason we plan to be offering shading data soon, so that you don't have to get up on the roof at all. The best way right now to think about it, Sunsight today, is as a real force multiplier. What's the value of a single surveyor being able to get to one or two more sites in a day? What's the value of having them maybe get up on the roof only if necessary? For example, if the designer thinks that they're going to need to use some facets, that could potentially be shaded. What's the safety factor in terms of significantly reducing the time that somebody's up on a roof? So I would say it's speed, it's safety, it's how do you help your folks out in the field maximize what it is that they're doing. And then sometime soon, hopefully, how do we prevent the need for them to get on the roof at all?
Okay, next question. Which app or software links the drone images to EagleView?
So generally, actually, it's not drone imagery. Like I said, we're mostly based on aerial imagery. So the aerial imagery, there's a couple different ways that you can view it. Like I said, we work in several different industries that we're using it with. And I would love to know what exactly your use case that you're interested in, if you are specifically interested in drone-based imagery. There are some other products that we offer that are connected to that. But this imagery is predominantly our high-res aerial-based imagery.
Okay, next question. How much does a Sunsight report cost per house?
So that'll vary a little bit. The best, we kind of have some standard pricing, and then those will vary a lot based on volume. So I would say if you're interested, please reach out, and we've got your contact information, and let us know in the chat that you're interested, and we'll have somebody follow up with you and talk about those different options.
Okay, next question. How accurate are the measurements and penetration identification?
Yeah, super valid question. At the end of the day, that's really what we're offering you. We've done a bunch of internal studies. We go out and measure homes, so we are confident that our measurements are accurate to within a couple inches. Accuracy is a little bit of a tricky question because how do you define a particular measurement? So, for example, if you're saying a measurement is from the gutter edge to the edge of the ridge cap, then our measurements will differ from yours slightly. Not necessarily an accuracy point, it's just that we're measuring a slightly different piece. But like I said, we measure 20 to 30,000 roofs a day across North America for a variety of different industries. So, that we clearly have been able to get down to some pretty tight tolerances on the accuracy in order for us to have that variety of customers who are using information.
Okay, what is the turnaround time for the reports?
Yeah, so turnaround time depends a little bit in terms of the volume and the SLA, which is part of the reason we'd love to talk to you directly. Generally, at the outlier, we'll say 48 hours that we'll turn around for. Generally, we're trending quite a bit shorter than that. And so one question that we do hear a lot of customers talk about is speed. How fast can you do it? And I'd say if you are going to order a report at the date that you get an appointment confirmed, the odds that you're going to have a Sunsight report in your hands well before that appointment are exceedingly high. And we'd love to answer more, please follow up. We'd love to answer some more questions in terms of, or to understand a little better, your volume, your location, et cetera.
Okay, next question. With our enterprise, we install systems on any type of roof. Does it only work for homes?
No. No. We definitely do commercial roofs as well. So whether you're, we sort of make the distinction in our reports between residential and commercial, but in reality, we do super steep pitch to low slope, generally any sort of size. So.
Okay. Those are all the questions that we had at the moment. Justin, let me know if you want to leave a couple more minutes or what you'd like to do.
Yeah. Well, I guess I'm happy to answer other questions. Maybe give them a minute to see if anything else comes in. Otherwise, I would encourage you to go take a look at the EcoView website. We also have some cool applications that are available in the iOS store or for Android. And then please, particularly if you're interested in shading, make sure to reach out and let us know so that we can keep you up to date as we start to roll out our new shading solution here in the near future.
All right, great. Anyone who has questions they did not ask, please feel free to contact our presenters on your own. Again, this webinar will be shared with all registrants so you can view it again at your convenience. I'd like to thank Justin again for being here and EagleView for sponsoring today's webinar. And thank you to everyone in the audience for participating. I hope you enjoyed our presentation, and we invite you to join us for more Solar Power World webinars. Thanks, everyone.